The divorced wife returned with twins and an empire. Chapter 1: The Wife He Forgot. The loneliest place in the world is standing beside the person you love and realizing they no longer see you. Elara Quinn Vale woke up with a smile. For the first time in weeks, excitement filled her chest. Today was special. 3 years ago, she had become Adrian Vale's wife. 3 years ago, she had walked down the aisle believing she had found the man she would spend the rest of her life with. Even now, after years of disappointment and lonely evenings, she still loved him. Maybe more than she should. Carefully, she glanced at the calendar on her bedside table. Their wedding anniversary, a date she never forgot. Unfortunately, she wasn't entirely sure Adrian remembered. Pushing the thought away, she climbed out of bed and headed downstairs. Today would be different. It had to be. The penthouse was quiet. Adrian had already left for work. That wasn't unusual. His days often started before sunrise. As the CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing development companies, Adrian's schedule was relentless. Meetings, investors, construction projects, business dinners. His work consumed nearly every hour of every day. Still, Elara refused to let that dampen her mood. She had plans. The entire day was dedicated to creating the perfect anniversary dinner. She visited a florist first. Fresh white roses, Adrian's favorite. Then she stopped by a specialty wine shop and purchased an expensive bottle she knew he enjoyed. The owner carefully wrapped it while congratulating her on the occasion. The simple kindness warmed her heart. By noon, she returned home and began preparing dinner. The dining room slowly transformed. Candles, flowers, elegant table settings, everything arranged with meticulous care. Every detail reflected her love. Every detail reflected hope. By evening, the penthouse looked beautiful. Soft candlelight flickered across the dining room. The scent of freshly prepared food filled the air. Elara changed into a navy blue dress Adrian had once complimented years ago. The memory made her smile. Back then, he noticed things. Back then, he noticed her. She checked the time. 6 o'clock. He should be home soon. Across the city, Adrian sat inside a crowded conference room. Several investors surrounded the massive table. Documents covered every available surface. Charts projected onto large screens. Voices overlapped as discussions intensified. A major investment deal was approaching its final stages. Hundreds of millions were involved. Delays were unacceptable. Mistakes were costly. Everyone wanted Adrian's attention. Everyone needed decisions. Everyone needed answers. And Adrian provided them. Efficient, focused, unwavering. His phone remained silent on the table. The date never crossed his mind. 7 o'clock arrived. Then 8. Then 9. The food remained untouched. The candles burned lower. Elara checked her phone repeatedly. No messages. No calls. Nothing. She told herself not to worry. The meeting was probably running late. That happened often. Adrian was busy. He worked hard. He carried enormous responsibility. Those explanations had comforted her countless times before. Tonight they felt weaker. By 10 o'clock, the dining room felt painfully quiet. Elara sat alone. The empty chair across from her seemed larger than it should. A constant reminder that she was still waiting. Still hoping. Still believing. The excitement she had carried all day slowly faded. Replacing it was a familiar ache. Loneliness. The kind that hurt more when someone was supposed to be there. At the company headquarters, the meeting finally ended close to midnight. Exhaustion weighed heavily on Adrian's shoulders. He gathered his documents and prepared to leave. As he stepped into the elevator, his assistant handed him several files for tomorrow. Early meeting at 7, Mr. Vale. Adrian nodded. Then his phone vibrated. A calendar notification appeared on the screen. Wedding anniversary. His entire body froze. For several seconds, he simply stared. The words felt unreal. Then everything came rushing back. The date. The dinner. Elara. He had forgotten. Completely. A rare feeling of guilt settled in his chest. He immediately unlocked his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen. What could he possibly say? There was no excuse, no explanation, nothing that would make this better. Yet after several moments, he typed the only thing he could think of. Sorry, something came up. He pressed send. then closed his eyes. The message felt inadequate, because it was. Back at the penthouse, Elara's phone lit up. Her heart leapt. Relief flooded through her. Finally, she grabbed the device and opened the message. The smile slowly disappeared from her face. Sorry, something came up. That was all. No anniversary greeting, no phone call, no explanation, just 4 words. Silence filled the room. The candles continued burning. The untouched dinner remained on the table. The flowers she had carefully chosen sat between 2 empty plates. Slowly, tears filled her eyes. Then one escaped, followed by another, and another. For the first time that evening, Elara allowed herself to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone mourning something she wasn't ready to lose. Outside, the city continued moving. Inside, Elara sat alone, staring at the message, wondering when she had become invisible to the man she loved. Chapter 2, The Empty Chair. Excuses are harmless once. Repeated enough times, they become wounds. Morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse. The candles had long burned out. The food sat untouched. The flowers remained beautiful. Everything else felt ruined. Elara stood alone in the dining room. The anniversary dinner she had spent an entire day preparing now looked like evidence of a mistake. Slowly, she gathered the plates. The silence around her was unbearable. Every clink of porcelain seemed louder than normal. Every movement reminded her that she had eaten alone. Again, she carried the dishes into the kitchen and began cleaning. 1 plate, 2 glasses, unused silverware, the expensive bottle of wine remained unopened. A bitter smile touched her lips. She remembered how excited she had been while buying it. The shop owner had congratulated her, asked if they had special plans. She had proudly answered yes. Now the memory felt humiliating. The front door opened shortly. Adrian stepped inside. His dark suit looked slightly wrinkled. His expression revealed exhaustion. He had barely slept. The investment deal was finally complete, but dozens of new responsibilities had immediately replaced it. As he loosened his tie, his gaze moved around the penthouse. Then toward the dining room. For a moment, he paused. The flowers, the candles, the decorations, the realization returned instantly. Anniversary. Guilt flickered across his face. Elara. She emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray. Good morning. Her voice sounded calm. Too calm. Adrian wasn't sure why that bothered him. I'm sorry about last night. The apology came quickly. Automatic. Necessary. Elara placed the tray down. It's fine. The answer felt equally automatic. A response she had probably rehearsed years ago. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Adrian expected her to be angry. Expected tears. Expected disappointment. Instead she simply looked tired. The reaction confused him. I couldn't leave the meeting. I know. There was a problem with the investors. I understand. Every answer was polite, reasonable, understanding. Yet somehow Adrian felt increasingly uncomfortable. Because she wasn't actually talking to him. She was merely responding. His eyes drifted toward the dining room again. For the first time, he truly noticed the effort. The flowers, the candles, the carefully arranged table, the details. She had planned everything, and he hadn't remembered any of it. Not until midnight. A faint crease appeared between his brows. How long were you waiting? Elara hesitated, then answered honestly, until midnight. The words hit harder than expected. Adrian looked away. He didn't know what to say. Because there wasn't a good response. No explanation that could erase 12 hours of waiting. No apology that could return the evening he had forgotten. Eventually, he cleared his throat. I'll make it up to you. The promise sounded familiar, even to him. Elara simply nodded. Okay. Nothing more. No excitement. No smile. No questions. Just acceptance. And somehow that felt worse. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Adrian left for work shortly after breakfast. Another meeting. Another project. Another deadline. Before leaving, he glanced back toward Elara. She was standing near the window, watching the city, lost in thought. For some reason, the image stayed with him long after he entered the elevator. Meanwhile, Elara tried to focus on her own responsibilities. Emails, foundation reports, charity planning. Normally work distracted her. Today it didn't. Her thoughts kept returning to the previous night. Not because Adrian forgot. Because he forgot completely. There had been no emergency. No accident. No crisis. Just work. Work had become so important that their anniversary never crossed his mind. That realization hurt more than she wanted to admit. By afternoon, she found herself sitting alone in the foundation office. A stack of documents rested untouched before her. She stared out the window, thinking, wondering, questioning. When had things started changing? When had they stopped talking? Stopped laughing? Stopped spending time together? She couldn't identify the exact moment. Only that the distance between them seemed larger every year. As evening approached, Elara returned home. The penthouse felt emptier than usual. Or perhaps she simply noticed it more. She changed into comfortable clothes and attempted to read. The words blurred together. Her attention drifted repeatedly. Eventually she gave up. The silence returned. Heavy, persistent, lonely. Then suddenly, her phone rang. Elara frowned. Few people called her directly in the evening. She glanced at the screen. The name displayed there surprised her. Serena Hart, Adrian's trusted colleague, a woman Elara had always considered a friend. Confused, she answered. Hello. A warm voice greeted her immediately. Elara, hi. I hope I'm not interrupting. Elara sat upright. No, not at all. There was a brief pause. Then Serena spoke gently. I heard about yesterday. Elara froze. The loneliness inside her chest tightened. For the first time since the anniversary, someone sounded genuinely concerned. And she didn't realize it yet. But that phone call was about to change far more than a single evening. Chapter 3, A Shoulder to Lean On. Sometimes the people who comfort your pain are the same people quietly feeding it. The following afternoon, Elara sat inside her foundation office staring at the same report for nearly 10 minutes. The words refused to register. Her thoughts remained trapped in yesterday's phone call. Serena Hart. The woman had sounded genuinely concerned. Not curious, not judgmental, concerned. It was refreshing, especially after spending years convincing herself that everything was fine. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared. Would you like some company? Serena. Elara hesitated. Normally she preferred handling things alone. But lately, alone was all she ever seemed to have. After a moment, she typed a reply. That would be nice. An hour later, Serena arrived at a quiet cafe near the foundation office. She looked elegant as always. Professional, confident, perfectly composed. The moment she saw Elara, her expression softened. There you are. A small smile appeared on Elara's face. Thank you for coming. Of course. Serena took the seat across from her. Friends show up when they're needed. The words warmed Elara more than she expected. Because lately, she had felt forgotten. Invisible, unimportant. And Serena was making her feel seen. For several minutes, they talked about simple things. Work, the foundation, current events. Nothing serious, nothing painful. Eventually Serena studied her carefully. You look exhausted. Elara laughed weakly. Do I? A little. The gentle honesty made Elara lower her eyes. Serena wasn't wrong. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the anniversary table. The candles, the empty chair, the message. Sorry, something came up. The memory still hurt. Serena reached for her coffee. You know, Adrian looked exhausted too. Elara looked up. He did. He's been under enormous pressure. The statement immediately triggered Elara's instinct to defend him. I know. Serena nodded. I wasn't criticizing him. No, I know. The conversation fell quiet for a moment. Then Serena sighed. Honestly, I worry about both of you. The statement surprised Elara. Why? Because neither of you seems happy. The words landed heavily, not because they were cruel. Because they were difficult to deny. Elara stared into her coffee. For years she had hidden her feelings. From family, from friends, even from herself. But somehow Serena made talking feel easy. Safe. Before she realized it, the words began spilling out. I know Adrian works hard. Serena listened silently. I know everything he does is important. She nodded. He's building something incredible. Another nod. But, Elara's voice faltered. The single word carried years of sadness. Serena waited patiently, but sometimes I feel like I'm not part of his life anymore. The confession finally escaped. Raw, honest, painful. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Serena's expression softened further. I'm sorry. The sympathy in her voice felt genuine. And perhaps part of it was. I shouldn't complain. Elara immediately regretted speaking. You're not complaining. I'm just being emotional. No. Serena shook her head. You're lonely. The directness stunned her, because no one had ever said it aloud before. Not her mother, not her friends, not even herself. Lonely. The word sat heavily in her chest. And the worst part was how accurate it felt. Not even herself. Lonely. The word sat heavily in her chest. And the worst part was how accurate it felt. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Serena mostly listened, occasionally asking questions, occasionally offering reassurance. Nothing seemed unusual, nothing seemed manipulative. She simply appeared to be a concerned friend. Exactly what Elara needed, exactly what Elara believed she was. As they prepared to leave, Serena paused near the cafe entrance. Something thoughtful crossed her face. Then she turned toward Elara. Can I ask you something? Of course. Serena hesitated, as though carefully choosing her words. When was the last time Adrian truly spent time with you? The question hit harder than Elara expected. Her immediate response died before reaching her lips. Because she didn't know. Not exactly. There had been dinners, events, occasional conversations, but genuine time together, time without work, time without interruptions, time where she felt like a wife instead of an afterthought. She couldn't remember, and that realization frightened her. After they said goodbye, Elara drove home in silence. Serena's question repeated endlessly inside her mind. When was the last time Adrian truly spent time with you? She searched for an answer. A specific memory, a recent moment, anything. Nothing came. By the time she reached the penthouse, her chest felt strangely heavy. Because for the first time, she wasn't questioning Adrian. She was questioning the marriage itself. And whether she had been ignoring the truth for far too long. Far above the city, lights illuminated the empty penthouse. The place she called home. The place she often occupied alone. The place where she would once again wait for her husband to return. Unaware that Serena's question would continue echoing through her mind long after the conversation ended. Because some questions change everything. Not when they're asked, but when you realize you cannot answer them. Chapter 4, Priorities. Sometimes the things we do for the people we love become the very things that push them away. Adrian Vale rarely had time to think. His days moved from one responsibility to another with relentless speed. Meetings, investors, construction projects, financial reports. Every hour was scheduled. Every decision carried weight. Every mistake could cost millions. This morning was no different. He stood inside the conference room on the top floor of Vale Holdings headquarters, staring at a digital presentation projected across the wall. The room was filled with executives, architects, financial advisors, investors, everyone waiting for his decision. On the screen stood the largest project the company had ever attempted. A massive luxury housing development that would reshape an entire district of the city. If successful, it would cement Vale Holdings as the industry leader for years to come. If it failed, Adrian had no intention of allowing that to happen. The investors need a final commitment. One of the board members adjusted his glasses. The deadline is approaching. Adrian folded his arms. What are the projected risks? Immediately, several executives began presenting reports. Construction costs, supply chain concerns, permit delays, financial forecasts. The discussion continued for nearly 2 hours. By the end, everyone looked exhausted. Everyone except Adrian. He remained focused, sharp, determined, the way he always was when business was involved. Because this company wasn't merely a job. It was his responsibility, his legacy, his future, and in his mind, his family's future as well. Later that afternoon, Adrian finally retreated to his office. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass walls. His desk remained covered in documents. A normal sight. He loosened his tie and sat down. For the first time all day, silence filled the room. Briefly, very briefly, then a knock interrupted. His assistant entered carrying another stack of files. The investors approved the revised proposal. Adrian nodded. Good. There are also several coordination meetings scheduled next week. Fine. The assistant hesitated. Should I move anything? No. The answer came automatically. Nothing was more important than keeping the project on schedule. Nothing. Or so he believed. As the afternoon continued, Adrian became absorbed in work once again. Emails, phone calls, budgets, negotiations. Hours disappeared without notice. The outside world barely existed. His phone vibrated several times. Most notifications went ignored, until one particular call appeared. The screen displayed a familiar name. Adriana Vale, his younger sister. Adrian sighed before answering. Adriana, well, look at that. Her voice carried immediate sarcasm. The great Adrian Vale actually answered. He rubbed his forehead. What do you want? I wanted to know if you're still alive. I'm working. Obviously. Adriana's response came instantly. That's always the answer. Adrian leaned back in his chair. What is it? For a moment, silence filled the line. Then Adriana asked a simple question. One he wasn't expecting. Have you spoken to your wife lately? Adrian frowned. The question felt oddly specific. Of course. When? His expression tightened. Why are you asking? Because Mom mentioned the anniversary. The words landed heavily. Anniversary. The memory returned immediately. The dinner. The forgotten date. The disappointed look on Elara's face the following morning. A flicker of guilt surfaced. Gone almost instantly. Replaced by practicality. I already apologized. Adriana sighed. The sound carried unmistakable frustration. That's not what I asked. Adrian remained silent. His sister continued. You know, there was a time when Elara was the center of your world. She still is. The answer came without hesitation. Because Adrian genuinely believed it. Everything he did was for their future. For stability. For security. For success. Wasn't that what a husband was supposed to do? Provide. Protect. Build something lasting. He didn't understand why everyone seemed determined to criticize him lately. On the other end of the call, Adriana was quiet. Then she spoke softly. Adrian, being someone's priority and saying they're your priority aren't always the same thing. The statement irritated him, not because it was wrong. Because he didn't know how to respond. I'm busy. There it is. What? Your favorite excuse. Adrian's jaw tightened. It's not an excuse. No. Adriana laughed sadly. Then what is it? The conversation ended shortly afterward. Neither sibling sounded satisfied. After hanging up, Adrian returned his attention to the project files. At least he tried to. The words lingered. Being someone's priority and saying they're your priority aren't always the same thing. He didn't like the thought. Didn't like what it implied. Because from his perspective, he was sacrificing everything for the people he loved. Long hours, stress, pressure, responsibility, all of it, for Elara, for their future. Surely she understood that. Surely she knew. Yet for some reason, Adriana's question continued echoing in his mind. Have you spoken to your wife lately? Adrian stared out at the city. The answer should have been simple. Instead, it felt increasingly complicated. And somewhere across that same city, Elara sat alone, wondering when her husband had stopped making time for her, while Adrian remained convinced he was doing everything right. Chapter 5, The Charity Gala. Nothing hurts quite like waiting for someone who promised they would come. The Quinn Foundation Charity Gala was one of the most anticipated events of the year. Business leaders, philanthropists, celebrities, and media representatives filled the grand ballroom of the Imperial Grand Hotel. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the elegant venue. Soft classical music drifted through the air. Everything had been planned to perfection. Vivian Quinn personally oversaw every detail. As always. For Elara, however, none of it mattered. Not really. Because tonight, she was waiting for Adrian. Again. 3 days earlier, she had personally invited him. Unlike previous occasions, Adrian had immediately agreed. I'll be there. Those 4 words had brought unexpected relief. For once, she hadn't needed to persuade him. Hadn't needed to remind him. Hadn't needed to ask twice. He simply promised. And Elara had believed him. Perhaps because she wanted to. Perhaps because she missed the version of Adrian who once showed up without being asked. The evening officially began at 7. Guests gradually filled the ballroom. Conversations flowed naturally. Laughter echoed throughout the venue. Several people approached Elara throughout the night. Donors, partners, friends of the foundation. Everyone offered congratulations. Everyone praised the event's success. Elara thanked them politely, smiled when appropriate, maintained perfect composure, but her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance. Waiting, searching, hoping. 8 o'clock arrived. No Adrian. Vivian eventually approached her daughter. You look beautiful tonight. Elara smiled. So do you. Vivian squeezed her hand gently. Where's Adrian? The question carried no judgment. Only curiosity. Still, Elara felt a small knot tighten inside her chest. He's running late. Vivian nodded, understanding. At least outwardly. The older woman didn't press further. But the concern remained visible in her eyes. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian sat inside another meeting. The housing development project had encountered unexpected complications. Investors demanded immediate solutions. Contractors needed approvals. Lawyers reviewed revised agreements. Everyone required his attention. The discussion stretched far longer than expected. Hours passed, one after another, without pause, without rest, without Adrian once checking the time. Back at the gala, Elara's smile gradually became harder to maintain. Guests began noticing. Subtle whispers circulated. Questions followed. Mr. Vale couldn't make it. Is everything all right? Business emergency. Each inquiry felt harmless on its own. Together, they became exhausting. Embarrassing. Painful. Still, Elara answered every question with grace. He's tied up with work. He sends his apologies. He wanted to be here. The words sounded convincing, because she genuinely believed them. By 9:30, even she stopped believing. Her phone remained silent. No messages. No updates. Nothing. The realization hurt. Not because Adrian was late. Because he hadn't even thought to tell her. Once again, she found herself standing alone while everyone else arrived with spouses, partners, and loved ones. The loneliness felt overwhelming. The event continued around her. Photographers captured moments. Guests danced. Donors celebrated successful fundraising efforts. Everything appeared perfect from the outside. Inside, Elara felt increasingly hollow. As though she were watching someone else's life unfold. A life where appearances mattered more than reality. Elara, a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned. Serena Hart stood beside her. Elegant as always, her dark evening gown perfectly suited the occasion. Concern filled her expression. Are you all right? The simple question nearly broke Elara's composure. Because nobody else had asked. Everyone else asked about Adrian. Only Serena asked about her. I'll be fine. The answer sounded weaker than intended. Serena's eyes softened. You don't look fine. For a moment, Elara looked away. Toward the ballroom entrance. Still empty. Still no Adrian. Still waiting. Serena followed her gaze. Understanding dawned instantly. A faint shadow crossed her expression. Not judgment. Not criticism. Sympathy. Or at least what appeared to be sympathy. Has he called? Elara shook her head. No. The single word felt heavier than it should. Because it carried hours of disappointment. Hours of hope slowly fading. Hours of waiting. Serena moved beside her. Not too close. Not too far. Simply present. A silent source of support. The kind Elara desperately needed at that moment. Around them, the gala continued. Guests laughed. Music played. Champagne glasses clinked together. Yet for Elara, everything seemed distant. Muted. Unimportant. Because the one person she wanted beside her wasn't there. Again. And for the first time that evening, she began wondering whether he had ever intended to come at all. As that painful thought settled into her heart, Serena remained at her side. Watching. Listening. Waiting. And somewhere across the city, Adrian remained completely unaware that another crack had just formed in his marriage.